Srila Prabhupada Lingamrita. Chapter entitled The Lame Man and the Blind Man. Yes, said Prabhupada, I was clapping my hands. In the meeting I used to collect not less than $6, not more than $20, 3 times a week. Although Srila Prabhupada's triumph was that the early days of struggle were over, when he recalled them, he was immersed in a very special, sweet remembrance. He changed from one mood to another, and sometimes mixed them. The days of his helpless, utter dependence on Krishna, when no one was present, and his present satisfaction, surrounded by hundreds of faithful disciples. While remembering the old days, he was now realizing his original goals for ISKCON New York, the beacon light for our worldwide propaganda. In the late afternoon, as the sun was setting, Srila Prabhupada liked to sit on the roof of his skyscraper, and his disciples would sit with him. Although the building was in mid-town, being situated on the west side, afforded it a feeling of distance from the intensity of mid-Manhattan. Prabhupada would look out at the Manhattan skyline, and a breeze from the Hudson would ease the July heat. One evening, some of the devotees described to Srila Prabhupada some of the abominable activities going on in the city. They told him of prostitution and pornography, of acts of rampant criminal violence, and of the strange fetishes and fads of the flesh eaters, including the eating of human fetuses. This means, said Prabhupada, that we are actually preaching to animals. One night on the roof, Rameshwar asked Srila Prabhupada to reveal his plan for conquering the world with Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was silent. Finally he said, no, because if I tell you my plans, then they may be spoiled. He had a plan, he said, but they were not ready for it. I think we've read that before. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Canto 5, Chapter 11, Text 7. Okay. I'll just recite a couple of prayers myself and we'll go on to the Sanskrit. Naranam Naskrityanam Chandalalutamam Tekam Sanasatam Vyasam Tatochan Vididinat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nastya Prasya Vajreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevriya Bhagavatinchama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nastiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So please repeat. Tavan,
Tavan,
Ayam,
Ayam,
Vyavahara,
Vyavahara,
Sadavi
Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Kshetragya
Kshetragya
Sakshyo
Sakshyo
Bhavati
Bhavati
Stula
Stula
Shukshma
Shukshma
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Shukshma
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Sukshma
Tasman
Mano Lingam
Ado
Vedanti
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Gunat sorry Agunat Vasya Para Avarasya Gunat Vasya Paravarasya Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Shukshma
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Sukshma
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Shukshma
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Sukshma
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Sukshma
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Sukshma
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Tavanayam Vyavahara Sadavi
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Sukshma
Kshetragya Sakshyo Bhavati Stula Sukshma
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Tasman Mano Lingam Ado Vedanti
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya
Gunat Vasya Paravarasya
One day.
You seem to be doing alright.
I can do the last two lines and the first two.
Please repeat. Tava until that time.
Until that time.
I am this. Vyavahara.
Vyavahara.
The artificial designations.
The artificial designations.
Being fat or skinny.
Being fat or skinny.
Or belonging to the demigods.
Or belonging to demigods.
Or human beings.
Or human beings.
Sada. Always. Adi. Manifesting. Kshetragya. Of the living entity. Sakshya. Testimony. Bhavati. Is. Stula Shukshma. Fat and skinny. Tasmat. Therefore. Mana. The mind. Lingam. The cause. Ada. This. Vadanti. They say. guna agunatvasya, of being absorbed in material qualities,
of being absorbed in the material qualities,
or devoid of material qualities.
or devoid of material qualities.
Para-avarasya, and of lower and higher conditions of life.
and of lower and high conditions of life.
Translation, Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Jai. The mind makes the living entity within this material world wander through different species of life, and thus the living entity experiences mundane affairs in different forms as a human being, demigod, fat person, skinny person, and so forth. Learned scholars say that bodily appearance, bondage, and liberation are caused by the mind. Please repeat. The mind makes the living entity within this material world
The mind makes the living entity within this material world
wander through different species of life,
wander through different species of life,
and thus the living entity experiences
and thus the living entity experiences
mundane affairs in different forms as a human being,
mundane affairs in different forms as a human being,
demigod, fat person, skinny person, and so forth.
demigod, fat person, skinny person, and so forth.
Learned scholars say
Learned scholars say
that bodily appearance, bondage, and liberation
that bodily appearance, bondage, and liberation
are caused by the mind.
are caused by the mind.
Just as the mind is the cause of bondage, it can also be the cause of liberation. The mind is described here as para-avara. Para means transcendental, and avara means material. When the mind is engaged in the Lord's service, Savayamana Krishna Padam Vrinda Yom, it is called para, transcendental. When the mind is engaged in material sense gratification, it is called avara, or material. At the present moment, in our conditioned state, our mind is fully absorbed in material sense gratification, but it can be purified and brought to its original Krishna consciousness by the process of devotional service. We have often given the example of Ambarish Maharaj. Savayamana Krishna Padara Vindayo Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunanuvanani. The mind must be controlled in Krishna consciousness. The tongue can be utilized to spread the message of Krishna and glorify the Lord, or take prasad, the remnants of food offered to Krishna. Senmukhi hi jivado. When one utilizes the tongue in the service of the Lord, the other senses can be purified, can become purified. As stated in the Lauda Pancharatra, Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam Tatparit Velam Nirmalam. When the mind and senses are purified, one's total existence is purified, and one's designations are also purified. One no longer considers himself a human being, a demigod, a cat, dog, Hindu, Muslim, and so forth. When the senses and mind are purified and one fully engages in Krishna service, one can be liberated and return home back to Godhead. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, in this conversation between King Rahugana and Jad Bharat, Jad Bharat is currently speaking to the king, and satisfying the king's inquiry into the absolute truth, how to see beyond material designations. So here he's continuing to speak on the mind and how powerful the mind is. It has the ability to take one all over the universe. It has the ability to have us enter 8,400,000 species of life. And it gives us the ability, it can either give us the, absorb us in some material designation of how we're the current body that we're in, and therefore we're like this and like that, and have to be careful of this and that. Or one can feel inhibited or inferior, or one can artificially inferior, or one can think oneself artificially superior, like in a demigod body. And maintaining these materialistic absorptions of the mind, then one next body is being formed. One next material body is being formed. So it's saying how the learned scholars say that bodily appearance, bondage and liberation are caused by the mind. So liberation can be caused by the mind also. In that when we control the mind in devotional service, so and in this way one can be liberated and return home back to Godhead. So how important it is to control the mind, and in a way that's given in Shastra. We can't trust our mind and imperfect senses. If we do, then we'll be misled. So that's why it's so important to control the mind and the senses, so that they don't mislead us back into this samsara, this cycle of birth and death. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manava shraddhavanto nasuyanto muchyante te pi karmabi. Those persons who execute their duties according to my instructions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruited actions. Because when we're absorbed in the bodily conception, we engage in activities with this desire for a certain fruit or a certain result. This is the way of sense gratification. So if we can engage in our duties, the practices of devotional service to please Krishna, then gradually we can be purified from that conditioned mentality. And because as we practice, our faith becomes stronger in the practice, in the process, and how it works. We have direct experience. And in this way we can progress with confidence and patience and determination that the end result will be there. Like we say every morning, the desired result is Krishna Prema, pure love of Krishna. So it's important not to let ourselves be distracted or by a material conception of what's going on in our lives and in those around us. Because not only do we learn to accept that we're not this body, but that along comes with that is that other persons are not their body either. They're not their conditioning, they're not their bodily appearance or their idiosyncrasies, that's not them. So this way we can be more peaceful, and the more we can develop that mentality, control the mind in that way, then the less disturbances are there or in the world of duality. Because like it says in the next verse in the Gita here, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, defrauded and ruined in their endeavours for perfection. So this is definitely there for the materialist. But we have to be careful that we, in the practice of our devotional service, that we don't make material comparisons, compare ourselves with others, because we're all unique in our own right as a creation of Krishna, a part and parcel of Krishna. So it can be quite dangerous to compare ourselves with others. Because we can feel ourselves artificially inferior or have developed so many inhibitions, or we may think ourselves superior and therefore have illusions of grandeur. And both are just the sides of the same coin of a material consciousness or a consciousness that's absorbed in the bodily conception of life. So that's why it's so important to not depend on our own perception of that's filtered through our own ego, our senses, or speculate, allow the mind to speculate on how things are. But have our intelligence guided by Guru, Sadhu and Sastra. If what we're thinking can be verified in that way, then we're safe. But if we allow our minds to go off on a tangent that's going away from these three, they're like the check and balance. So if we don't catch it, like when we're chanting, we're told to just put, when the mind wanders, just put it back to the sound vibration of the holy name. It wanders again, just put it back. So in the same way, not to let our minds get caught up in material, as Prabhupada says here, mundane affairs, but put it back to how would Prabhupada see this? How would Krishna see? How would Krishna see? How would Krishna view this situation? This is how it's so important also to discuss what we hear from the Shastra, and in this way we gain different angles of vision, so that we're not so trustful of our own. So we're not so we become develop a mistrust of our mind, and it's mental concoctions, with what it amounts to mental concoctions, if we don't keep it controlled and guided by Guru, Sadhu and Sastra. And another one that goes in the Gita that verifies this is that Bandhu Atmat Manastasya Yenatmaivatma Jita Anatmanas to Satrutve Vartitatmaiva Satruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So the mind is the enemy because it takes us away from, when it takes us away from Krishna, it's a friend when we use it to come closer to him. And it helps us to remind us of the instructions of Guru, Sadhu and Sastra. And it helps us to take advantage of association devotees in whatever way we can to, for that strength to keep on the path. So in the next verse there is, for one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honour and dishonour are all the same. So one who's conquered the mind to just be fixed in the devotional service of the Lord, then he knows he's rightly situated. And you see how devotees around the world go through so many, make so many sacrifices and endure so much, sometimes hardship and pressure come from outside sources. It may be the government, it may be the climate of the country, or to speak of this pandemic. So they're willing to give up any consideration for happiness and distress, heat and cold, honour, dishonour, to serve the Lord. That's their priority. Someone has to develop a very strong mind and develop a one-pointed vision, so that in this way there's no impediment to one's devotional service. And then the next verse says, a person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones or gold, as the same. So to be established in self-realization and yogi, fully satisfied by virtue of quiet knowledge and realization. So this way he acts in a certain manner, and that which promotes further progress in his Krishna consciousness.